Oh boy, another person who is going to rant about the randomizer mode in Ritual of the Night. Great, exactly what I needed. I mean, yeah, it is true that there have been lots of complaints regarding unbeatable seeds, but those have never really been much of an issue for me, and I'll explain why that is a bit later on. Right now I'd like to talk about something else. Something that I've recently found out, and that some of you might already know, is that the randomizer mode in Ritual is not technically random. And what I mean by that is that all it does is shuffling the items that were originally there between themselves, rather than randomly picking anything. This is a system that could work perfectly fine for other games, but in Ritual's case, only a very small portion of all the items can be found in the overworld. And when I say overworld, I mean the loot you can find from the chests and enemies. The good majority of them are either craftable, rewards from quests, or locked behind cheat codes. This is a big problem. Since all the items you find in the castle will just keep rotating between themselves, you'll just keep getting the same items over and over and over. And sure, you'll get them in a different order every time, but that's not enough to push the replayability to its full potential, especially when it's not even the individual items themselves that get shuffled, but the whole containers. So basically, if let's say you have 4 materials in a chest, those materials will always spawn together in the same order every seed. Now if you're someone who just got started with Randomizer, it won't be too obvious at the beginning, but on the long term it will get very repetitive. The end of each run kinda reaches this convergent point, where you just end up with the same gear, the same weapons, and the same strategies. The best example of this is probably the whole Valkyrie set. I think my last 3 randomizer runs all ended up with me using these 3 items. And what's the reason behind that? Well, out of all the equipments you can get from chests, these are simply the best ones. So there's no advantage in using anything else really. The first time I got all 4 of these, I was like, oh my god, what are the odds of that? Now I'm just like, oh my god, I do not want to see the Valkyrie equipment anymore. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. The randomizer is just completely ruined. If the outcome is always the same, then there's no point. The replayability is just gone. Then of course we can't forget about the fried fish. The underground of this game is filled with that dish, which means that when it gets shuffled with the rest, it will be omnipresent. And it will seem like the game wants to shove fried fish down your throat than anything else. Maybe you'll find a few sponge cakes here and there, but that's about it. If you want other dishes, you'll have no choice but to craft them yourself. Oh, but what about those cool accessories that you can get as rewards from quests originally? Where could those possibly go? Well, if you're one to randomize the crafting, you'll notice that it actually goes in the dismantling. That's the only place where you can find them. So if you can't find an alchemist source, or if you choose to not randomize the crafting, you'll never get those. Ever. Now I'm not going to pretend like this is something that the game hides from you, because the randomizer settings do clearly state that the items get shuffled. But that still doesn't excuse the fact that there is no option to truly randomize the items. So there is no real chaos mode. And I have to be honest, after finding this out, I pretty much lost the will to do any more runs of Randomizer. And so that is why I decided to make my own little fix. A script that will take the file that controls all the drop rates in the game and completely randomize all of its entries. With this, anything goes. You could get the most broken weapon from a chest, just like you could also get a single coin. Using this has made my runs so much more interesting and so much more varied. And I'm sure that you will find this useful as well. I put the link to the page of the mod in the description below, and I will now proceed to explain how you can use this script with your Steam copy of Ritual of the Night. First, you must know that after my program creates the randomized drop rate file, the tools that are used to convert it will need .NET Core 3.0 runtime to be installed on your computer. This should be the only requirement. Link is in the description. Okay, so once you've downloaded the file, use WinRAR to extract it anywhere you want. So here you'll see 2 folders. You're going to want to head into Serializer first, then Bash script until you see this. Now all you have to do here is double click on generate.exe. It will prompt you with this message on whether you have the IGA DLC installed or not. So here you can answer by Y for yes or N for no. Personally, I do own the DLC because it's awesome. So I'm going to say Y for yes. Okay, so here it just generated the randomized droprateMaster.json. So with this, simply drag this file onto the second bat file, JSON to bin. Okay, press any key to continue. And this appeared. After that, double click on the third batch file. And here you go. Now the droprateMaster.uset has been overwritten. If you're wondering what the first batch file is for, that's in case, for one reason or another, you would like to convert the uset back to JSON. You can simply drag the uset onto it, and it will do the job for you. So simply copy this file, go back into the root folder, head into Unreal Pack, and as you can see here, this script is actually part of my Randomizer tweaks mod. Randomizer tweaks is just some other quality of life changes for Randomizer, aside from the drop rates. The first thing that it does is that it reduces the map completion requirement for some of the tomes in the library, because you'll most likely not want to fill every single spot on the map every single run, just to get the best book. The second thing is that it puts all the heir apparents in the shop right from the beginning, so you have access to all of them for only 100 gold each. Since those are only aesthetics, might as well make them available from the beginning. It also makes every single enemy quest available from the start. That way you don't have to remember to come back every time you defeat a certain pool of enemies just to get the next ones. Then it removes the max HP and MP cap that you can get from these upgrades. That way, if the seed gives you an unreasonable amount of HP upgrades, well, at least they won't go to waste. And the last thing is for those weapons that have 3 upgradable versions. It changes the icons so that you can immediately recognize which level it is. So you're going to want to go in here, keep going, data table, until you see this. So here you can paste the file that you just copied. And once that's done, go back into Unreal Pack folder, and then drag a Randomizer Tweaks folder into Unreal Pack with compression.bat. And here the file that most of you might be familiar with already just appeared. If you happen to get an error right here, then you might have to update your Microsoft Visual C++. This is the file that will be used for the main mod. So if you've already installed mods for Ritual of the Night before, then you know what to do from here. But if you haven't, copy this file, then head into your main Steam folder. So Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Ritual of the Night, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Content, Packs, and now I'm going to put this in the mods folder. If you haven't created this folder already, go ahead and do so and make sure that it is typed exactly as I did. Then I'm going to paste the file here, and there you go. Now it's ready. Now all you have to do is simply boot the game, and the changes will be applied. The in-game settings for the randomizer don't really matter here, so you can still go with whatever you want. And there you go. Now every single drop is completely random. So of course a small inconvenience with this is that you have to go through this whole process every time you're going to reset a run. However, if you're someone who struggles with unbeatable seeds, I would highly recommend you to check out the Bloodstained Speedrun Wiki website. This page lists most, if not all, the tricks and glitches that can be used in speedruns to find a way around the normal game requirements so that some key items will no longer be needed. If you implement these in your randomizer runs, I can guarantee you that it will considerably reduce the amount of resets. So many times would I have had to abandon seeds if it weren't for those alternate solutions. They are extremely useful. Now, what if you want more randomization options? Well, everything that the script picks from is actually right here in this item pool folder. So if you go in here, you'll find a list of all the items that can appear in the randomizer. So let's say you wanted to remove a specific item to make sure that it does not appear in the seed no matter what. Simply find its line and then remove it entirely. Make sure to not leave an empty line like this. This will just create a null entry and will not work properly. Similarly, you can also change the frequency of specific items. So let's say I wanted to make X potion more likely to appear than the others. I would simply copy its line several times. And there you go. Now X potion will be more likely to appear than any of those other items. Though you must know that the items in the following files have been set to reoccur only once each, in order to avoid duplicates. So if you want any of those to be able to reoccur more than once, you will have to duplicate their entries. You also notice that these words are not the item names directly, but their internal IDs. And while some of them will be consistent with their actual names, some of them won't. So if you're ever confused as to what is what, I will put the link to a page that lists all the items in the game, along with a lot of information about them, including the translation between IDs and names. Now, what if you wanted to remove a type of item entirely? You'd be tempted to simply delete every single entry in a file, but this will just create more null entries and will not work. So what you want to do instead is go in the type folder, and then here you have two files that determine the chest loots and the enemy loots by type. So here you'll see many entries copied several times. Reason for that being that some entries have to be very rare in comparison to others. But if you want to remove a certain type of items, this is here where you can do it. Of course, you can also change the frequency of those appearing types. So as you can see, by default, the crafting materials and upgrades have been set to be much more frequent than any other type. Right now, the ratio looks like this. When it comes to this file, all you can do is change frequency of types or remove types, nothing else. Now, if you go in enemy, you'll see that there are only 3 types that can appear. Those are the default settings. However, you can add more types if you wish. You can add any type into enemy.txt except for upgrade. Do not add upgrade in there, it will not work. However, you can add anything else, like weapons, bullet, actually wait, there's no S there, and let's say crafting mats dish. And here you go. I can freely add those entries and change their frequency. Now let's talk about the values. The values that you can change. All of it is in this folder right here. You'll see 6 files, giving you many options. So for instance, the first one decides the number of bullets that you can get in a range. So for example, here 6 is more reoccurring, so you'll be more likely to get 6 bullets than 3 and even less 9s. But you can change this number to your liking. There's also the amount of materials you can get from chests. This will affect crafting materials mostly. It will not affect weapons, accessories, and items like that. Those you can only get 1 copy of. But for crafting materials, let's say I wanted to get 3 materials per chest, I could simply change this to 3. If I want to get either 3 or 5, I could add a 5. Now I can do the same thing for the odds. Blue chests that give crafting materials have a range of odds that the materials can appear in. You can change this to your liking, though make sure that those are always float values. So at least 1 digit after the dot. Now, the one you'll most likely find useful is actually this one. This controls the drop rate of shards. So the script itself technically only takes care of items. The shard randomization is the same as it originally was, but I did add the option to change the drop rates for these. So by default it is set to alternate between these 3 numbers, but if this range is too high for you or too low, you can always change it to your liking. And that's it. Those are the simple steps on how you can implement my script with Randomizer mode. If you guys have any suggestions on what options I should add in the future, please let me know. The next thing I might do is also randomizing some other aspects of the game, in which case the generate.exe will create more files, but the process will be similar nonetheless. I initially gave my script the option to randomize his shard as well, but unfortunately if he has anything else than insatiable, the game will just soft lock as soon as you beat him. He will lock you into the room. This man will just never be satisfied with any other shard. So there's absolutely nothing I can do about that.